All right. I believe we are on, and today I have to welcome the great Larry Koonse here in, what's the name of the studio? I always make it up.
It's a different name each time.
Yeah. Oh, Santa Clarita. No, it's like a automatic.
Santa Clarita Sounds.
Yeah, automatic studios. Yeah, but Larry is perhaps one of the first amazing musicians I met when I moved in LA, and I can tell the story because, well, you know, it's very vivid in my memory. I was a student. I think it was my first year in Cal Arts, and we had to play a concert at a cafe with some of the students, and they invited this guy, like, that was from out of school. And here comes this young guy. I mean, by the way, he's my generation, so to me he was like, what is this guy doing? And he blew everybody away. I mean, back then he was already killing, and I've been his fan all this time, and I've been honored also to have him in some faculty in my own groups. So this is the great Larry Koonse.
Thank you, OTMARO. I'm such a huge fan of yours. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the first time we met, because I remember vividly the first time I heard you, and it felt like there was a hurricane in the room. I remember being terrified.
Well, that was the chili.
It's that Venezuelan chili.
Sorry, I have to. It was wonderful. Actually, I remember we played this. I mean, this tune by Lyle Mays that for me was like a freaking puzzle, mental puzzle, and it was like a feat of independence and counterpoint. I think I forgot the name.
I remember the piece too, but I don't remember the name.
Has different lines, and I was like just so like into just making the notes, and then you were playing the notes and then improvised your ass off on it. It's like I was like, man, this guy, I gotta stick close to this guy, and well, here we are 31 years later. I can get to ask you the questions.
I have some questions for you too, believe me, my friend.
So listen, well, the first question that I ask everybody, and I think it's mandatory because these times really call for some kind of a perspective, personal perspective, and some kind of sometimes reassurance, sometimes of empathy. Mm-hmm. So this pandemic lockdown hit us when we were not really expecting this, and it hit everybody in a different way. It created different responses on different kinds of musicians. Some have like immediately go into full creative mode. Some went through a period of like feeling defeated. So did you, talk about your experience with this lockdown in terms of losing the focus, the purpose, motivation, or if you have actually go into that other mode of like learning new skills or learning, developing new material. I mean, this on both sides, by the way, are perfectly okay, are perfectly human, you know?
Yeah.
It's a human behavior.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. When the lockdown first happened, I had multiple tours, multiple gigs that were canceled, you know, within a week. of the lockdown. And some people, you know, some concerts and tours were slated for the summer, and I thought maybe there's a possibility they would happen, but those disappeared really quickly too. And at the time I was teaching it at Cal Arts when the lockdown happened, so my full-time schedule didn't change one bit. I was still teaching. But once I was through with the semester, I was sort of looking at this void, you know. I was thinking, since the age of 16, because, you know, my father's a musician, so I was playing music at a young age and sort of already gigging by the age of 16. Since the age of 16, I was sort of obsessed with this thing and constantly, you know, learning new music and struggling with music and, you know, constantly involved in the process of growth, right? Or the stress that comes with that, you know, because there's a lot of stress as a musician, especially early on, when you're struggling with a lot of elements. So when this void happened, for me, it was actually kind of liberating. Mm-hmm. I've had this momentum and inertia since the age of 16, and all of a sudden, it was like I was in an elevator shaft falling down it, and all that momentum was gone. And along with that, actually, because all this stuff disappeared at one time, along with that, I really didn't have an urge to practice. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't have a motivation, an external motivation to actually play. So I went through this long period, basically where I didn't pick up the instrument at all, and became involved in home improvement and and just goofing off a little bit, feeling the kind of freedom that I hadn't felt since I was in high school.
Just like me. I mean, I went into this like amazing like phase of having to repair everything at home, right, Bebita?
Is he a good handyman, Katina?
This poison dart is gonna come from nowhere. I'm terrible for any of that, by the way.
But the interesting thing is, you know, so one day I saw my guitar on the stand, and 3 weeks after not playing it, I picked it up, and it was like honey dripping out of my fingers. The technique for me was not an issue. First of all, guitar is not a very physical instrument. It's not like playing trumpet or playing bass, where you constantly have to have it in your hands, you know, in order to really achieve some sort of fluidity. And it felt so good, OTMARO. I mean, it felt real too. In a way, my analysis of what happened is, to a certain extent, and we all have this in varying degrees. I have it in a lot of cases. There's too much of this for me. I get in my own way. My mind, my brain starts thinking and overthinking sometimes. And I think when I returned to the guitar after those 3 weeks, the channels were just open. You know, because, you know, from our deepest impulses, when we're playing music, the nervous system is translating this stuff into reality. Whatever that is, whatever that pathway is, from our urges to realization of something. And if those pathways are cluttered, the message is going to get diminished in some way. So for me, there was a real purity. All of a sudden, the channels felt really open. There was no self-criticism.
Incredible, yeah.
You know, it was actually liberating.
Wow. Well, you know, personally, I was coming from a extensive tour, and when this whole thing happened, I went straight into great. I mean, I've always loved my home, and for me, it's not a punishment to stay here. I have everything that I need, and I love cooking, and I went straight into let's enjoy my home and let's enjoy all this practice time.
Yes.
But then I hit a little dip, and because you want to, when you practice, you practice also for a purpose. You know, as Bob Shepard was saying last week, he practices and he wants to get better because he wants to apply it. And then when you see that, where's the application? Where's the gig? Where is it that I want to be able to really get this thing apply. Then it started hitting me a little harder than I was expecting.
Yep.
But then I went through the other mode. I mean, it's like maybe it's time to write. Maybe it's time to, because when you write, the application is there on the paper. It's there. It's already a document.
Yeah.
Whether you play it or not, it's there.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Bob Shepard, because my first gig after the lockdown was recording with Bob. Bob's an old friend. We're very tight. And I was a little apprehensive. What's it going to be like playing with other people in the same room? Do I still have it? Will I communicate? And for me, it was an absolute joy. And it reminded me how much I missed it. And what you're describing as being, that you're on this plateau, and then all of a sudden it just sort of bottoms out.
Yeah.
When you realize what you're missing, I missed it then, And I was really excited at the prospect of playing with you today. Same thing. It was like, oh my God, for me, it's solidified how important music is, and how it's sort of a way to communicate with my friends and colleagues in the most deep way.
Yeah.
And I really miss it.
Yeah. Amazing. It's well, needless to say that these encounters are the highlight for me, of this whole time, And but you mentioned something that is prompting me to go for the next question. It was not a scheduled question, but I just thought, you mentioned 16, the age of 16, and I know your father, and he's not only, I wish, is he looking to adopt a new son?
He would adopt you. He loves you.
Would he like to adopt me? It's like,
we're already musical brothers, though.
It's not only the greatest cat but he plays. Having that influence at home and such a wonderful cat, around. I guess. And you mentioned the age of 16. When I started, we didn't know what we were gonna play, and I have some charts that I had that we. Of yours, and I noticed that one of the charts was written in 1980, and
I was 3.
Yeah, you were part of this in vitro experiment.
Exactly.
Embryonic. So this is what hits me, is that we are almost the same age. In 1980, and if Aaron Serfati is watching this, he's going to get a kick of this. In 1980, Aaron Serfati and me, we were playing in our first band together. And we were playing disco music.
Disco.
We were playing disco, baby. Disco, baby. That was it. That was my world. And we were like trying to copy all this, Tavares and Bee Gees and all this, going from discotheque to discotheque, And then I'm watching this masterpiece you wrote back in 1980. That is to show that, at that age, you were already commanding such a deep knowledge of harmony, of not only harmony, composition and development, thematic development, and so besides the obvious, that I congratulate you, and it's obviously is a love for music that is a natural thing, but I would like you to comment on this misconception, or perhaps maybe I'm gonna have to take it back depending on your answer. I have to deal sometimes with students in which the parents of these students view music as a nanny, as an occasional nanny. When it comes to after school activities, I don't know if you've noticed that they put so much weight on sports. When it's about sports, they really get into it and
Yeah.
practice and the whole thing. But if it is about music, it's like, oh well, did you practice? Okay, all right, now you can. I mean, it's never that same sense of responsibility and discipline.
Yeah.
And if you really want to excel in music, being an artistic and a physical thing, you have to spend the time with discipline. So tell me about your social life, because this is misconception that that a great child prodigy, I mean, he has no friends and he has no this, he has no that. It's a very, I totally discard that theory. But tell me about it.
Yeah. First of all, I don't consider myself a prodigy. I actually feel like a late bloomer. But that late blooming kind of happened in an intense way. And it was, it's interesting. You say socially, OTMARO. And basically, I was fortunate enough to be at a junior high and high school, because they were both at the same place. It was a 6-year school, 3 years in junior high, 3 years in high school, that had an amazing jazz program. I mean, it produced the likes of like Carlos Vega and Scott Colley and on, all these great musicians. It was led by this band director named John Rinaldo, who really had a vision and had a way of teaching that was really compelling. He knew how to translate certain things that do not fit into words in lessons, like how to feel and phrase and make things swing, which is a very difficult thing. It's like teaching a language, It's a way of doing things. So that coupled with, when I was younger, my father was playing with Chico Hamilton, with George Shearing. So from a young age, even on an unconscious level, even if I wasn't serious about sort of pursuing this life as a guitarist, I was exposed to this great music. My father was a huge Bill Evans fan, Stan Getz fan, so all this music was sort of in my ear at a young age. And when I got to high school, there was that confluence of events. I'm at that place where people my age are interested in this music. And there was this wonderful, like you said, social aspect to it. With my buddies, we wanted to grow. And, really jazz, in a way, is a street language. So there was this place we would go to on the weekends. It was a jam session at a place called Le Omelette in Pasadena. We didn't make any money, but the place had music 7 nights a week. And I would go there with my friends, and we would teach each other, and little by little, we would get these little bits of information and get a deeper sense of how to function in this music. Which is so much more than like just what's the right note. Yeah. It's also, how do you communicate with other people? How do you have a shared sense of time? How do you tell a story? And how do you get out of people's way? And how do you emerge as the prominent voice? It's all these dynamics.
If
right?
If I would say something about it, that's the greatest social strategy ever.
Yes.
Everything that you learn in music, if you apply to social skills, that would be a super plus.
Absolutely. And governmental systems, political systems, the whole thing.
Especially how to get out of the way.
Exactly. How to listen.
How to listen.
Listen is important as is the most important thing.
Yeah, incredible, man. Yeah, so people have this misconception of a performer being alone in a room doing scales forever, and they forget that when they go out of the room, and the actual purpose is to eventually make music together with a team. No difference than a team of soccer or football, except that the communication is gonna be even so much tighter and so much profound. So that's one of those misconceptions that I had to tell people. It's like, come on, man, the discipline, everything will pay off. Everything, every minute will pay off.
But OT, they have to be in a situation where they are with peers that are like-minded.
Yeah.
You know, in order to really go to that next level, you have to be in one of those situations where you're playing with somebody that is on a similar level, and you have this sort of shared sense of wanting to grow together and find deeper places. And,
of course.
you know, and we lack that to a large extent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a little lost now.
yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's incredible. We can talk forever, but I think we should play a tune.
Please.
Yeah, because I want to show you how amazing my practicing time has been. Oh man! By the way, we were talking before about. Oh, there's one of the cameras that is causing a little bit of problem. Uh-oh.
By the way, this is a one-man production. I mean,
Yeah.
OT's sort of the
Yeah.
cameraman, the audio man. These things are...
Okay, so just for your records, the volume is good, but it's like more to the low side, just for your records.
Yeah, but one of the cameras is giving me a little bit of problem.
Yeah, and there is a little noise.
Yeah, that's the microphone having a contact there.
Okay, maybe Larry can change the mic to the other side, Larry, so
Sure.
the cable from the headphone doesn't touch it all the time. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys play.
Is that better? No.
Yeah, and let's see, we're gonna listen there, and we have people from Brazil as well, so if you want to say hi.
Oh, wow.
Okay, 1 second.
And Costa Rica and other places, okay?
I have to disconnect this thing.
Is that better, Katina?
Okay. So everything that is happening has never happened. That, thing with the cable and the other thing with the sound and now the camera, that has never happened.
Wow.
But
Well, we move on.
well, yeah, great. So let's play a tune. How about something medium tempo?
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
Should I start us off on this?
Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna show you. Microphones. Okay, wake up, OTMARO, wake up.
Yeah, OT.
That was Alone Together. Great title for this lockdown. And I love that song. It's a wonderful song. It's a beautiful song. But at the same time, it yields for so much. 1 second.
So
Yeah.
I have a question from.
But let's leave the questions because I have to first do these questions.
Okay.
Can you keep them? We're gonna do it
Yeah,
at the end.
Just let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you, baby. Yeah. So yeah, because I have a few comments and a few questions that I've prepared also for this. Remember that these interviews are. I'm asking questions that I've always wanted to learn first, and then, but there will be, we will be also taking questions from the audience, and Katina is taking them like the most interesting questions and the most, thought-provoking. So at the end, we're going to be addressing that. Okay. But what I was saying is that this song yields for so much. I mean, you can keep it, inside of the very tonal, harmonic, beautiful realm. But then it also invites you to more adventure-seeking avenues, and this takes me to my, I guess, knowing you for so many years, and I was trying to figure out what would I ask you from so many things that I love from your playing, and if I had to, it's hard to pick just one thing. So the one thing that I think is important not only for me but also for students around the world is this notion about all notes being, it doesn't matter the note, it's just the attitude what counts. And I always address this as, the attitude is what counts, and in order to get to that attitude you have to know a lot before that attitude can start kicking in. And knowledge is not only academic, it doesn't necessarily have to be academic knowledge. It can be acquired by other means, but it's knowledge nonetheless. So it's not like something that you can pick any note and then I'm killing it. So when I see a guy like you, I see a person that can navigate from the most inside to the most outside, and still I can keep. There's a connection. There's a wire that keeps everything connected. There's response. There's a plan, and so specifically your use of chromatism and approaches and extended language. So I would like you to comment first in a very basic level for those of you that are not musicians that are watching this. What goes through your mind, and then in a different level of involvement, you can do that same, address that question for the musicians that might want to benefit from this.
Sure. Firstly, there's a couple of analogies that I like to use. So, first of all, we're storytellers, and if we took the analogy as a metaphor for actually reading a book, in the book that you're reading, and the most interesting books to me are those books that don't give you too much information in the first paragraph, but they set a tone. And they set a sense of drama, and maybe they give the reader a sense of excitement and draw you in to the experience. So when I'm improvising, I want those elements to exist. So, for example, it's difficult to describe these things because sometimes you can, sometimes generalization, you miss out the details. But in general, when I'm beginning an improvisational journey, I don't want to throw too much information out there. I would rather do something that is compelling or dramatic, that draws people in, and in the process, draws me into the process. So if I play a million notes coming out of the gate, for example, it's very difficult for me to identify what the story is. But if I play 3 notes placed in such a way that, you know, maybe there's a dissonance that's left unresolved, or I'm placing something rhythmically in a place that is sort of rhythmically dissonant. There's sort of that's where the drama comes from. So if for example I you know, I'm playing alone together and I go, there's not much drama in that, and there's a lot of notes that are coming out of the gate. But if I go like this, so, you know, I played that little theme. I think I did something like, that's storytelling, in that I'm taking whatever has emerged and sort of expanding on it.
Yeah, developing.
Right, developing an idea. Now, the other thing that comes to mind in terms of like looking in terms of using a word that's sort of a metaphor for something else is architecture. So there's an architecture that when we're playing alone together, we're adhering to, right? There's certain boundaries that sort of have to be in place so that you can identify the architecture of the tune. So, you know, when you play, this tune is actually a little tricky because the first A section is 14 bars long. A little tricky to navigate as a musician because it's an uneven number of phrase structures.
Yeah.
Right? But the fact is
that's what it was. Oh, God damn it.
I should have told you before.
I was short.
I should have told you.
I was short too.
So, in other words, when we come back to the second A, or when we go to the bridge, when it finally moves to a different key in a really, identifiable way, it goes to the 4 chord. We have to agree on that motion or some implication of that motion so that we're unified in moving there. Now, what happens in between is where the dissonance can happen, you know, the things that are tugging to a certain place. And for me, dissonance is always serving a place in tonal music of pointing to an arrival, you know, tension, release. Release, yeah. You know. So those dissonances for me, you know, come between pitches that make sense, you know. You know, it's like those little chromatic motions are really defining something that's very, in terms of its face value, it's very melodic and very simple. But the chromaticism is like moving there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. The use of chromaticism as a ways of approaching, like, you know, what we call a target note. You know, we all know what are the I've heard so many times it's like, oh, jazz players, they just play mistakes. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain truth to that. You know, it's like when you play jazz, you can turn a mistake, and if you know your theory, if you can relate in your, or even not in theory, but if your ear is developed enough, you can immediately create a relationship between that wrong note and a great way to use it to approach the right one. And I always the analogy that I use is like the acrobatic airplane. You know, you can be acrobatic, and if you don't know how to land, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
You die. So learning how to use the chromaticism in order to land safely in the notes that you want. That's where it's at. And it is. You can take this and expand it, of course, because I've seen you taking a chromatic motif and morphing it and use. we've talked so many times about the voice leading concept, you know, and how voices tend to expand and contract, and you get all this all these great designs out of stuff that apparently could sound unrelated.
Yeah.
But it's all making sense because of the design of it, and knowing how you can move it at increments so that it will land where you want at the same time, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the interplay of so many other elements outside of note choice, you know. And when we're playing in the context of piano and guitar, sometimes we're having to ascertain what's missing and cover that element, whether it's, you know, possibly a bass motion or some kind of inner voice motion. So in the moment, we're also, even as a soloist, navigating, you know, range. You know, what range is working well with what OTMARO is playing right now. OTMARO's in the low range. You know, if I stay too much in that low range, the way the guitar sounds, it's going to get muddy, you know. So it's like there's all those other considerations that are going on in real time outside of note choice. And then, of course, we both are adhering to a form, a song form. So we have to honor that. We can't let go of that. We can't be free. Freedom is actually through structure, you know. So the structure frees us up and it unifies us. And besides for the structure, we're also unified by time feel. So, you know, it's interesting. Your time is amazing. I could actually be on the other end and ask you a zillion questions about time. Because time is such an interesting thing when it's a shared experience, especially in this context. When, for example, you know, typically when you play in a jazz group, there's going to be a bass player helping you out if he's playing 4 to the bar, and it's very obvious where the time is, right? In this context, we might not hear that. There might be silence. So how you exit a pitch or how you come into that pitch in terms of the time and feeling the tension and how you phrase it becomes so much more important, because all those subtle things are cues about how we're internally feeling that time.
Yeah. But when we talk about time, I think the same, in a way, some of the same concepts apply. You know, like the fact that we can stretch it, or that we can. Some people might interpret as we are stretching time or whatever, or you are doing. But sometimes it's just about the use of consonance and dissonance, but in terms of time, right? Applied to time.
That's right.
And you're gonna apply that when you're talking about a grid. There's this like basic grids that you can add, superimpose of time, that, you know, imply more like a triplet unit versus a binary unit, and they are coexistent, and it's up to you to research about other kinds of grids that you can. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, he's playing out of time. Maybe it all makes sense at the end when things actually boom land together, and you go like, oh,
yeah.
So there was an organization to that whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's obviously very obvious when you see a drummer like Vinny Colaiuta, for instance, that does that all the time, or a specialist in this kind of.
Right.
This is amazing, man.
I love it. I wish I was sitting in your seat, because there's so many things I would ask you, because culturally, you know, where you come from, South America, is probably one of the richest rhythmic cultures in the world. I mean, and there's that meeting of binary and triplet time, and I've learned so much of that about that from you, just listening to that looseness that can sort of happen when you're thinking about those two realms, you know.
Yeah, but you know, it's funny because the same thing actually happened with the merging of when jazz was born. It was all about that. That was the African and the European thing.
That's true.
And that's also, those two things are also coexisting in jazz in different subtle ways. You know, swing is about that. But still, the organization of the phrases in swing are still imply more a binary thing than a triplet. The triplet is just the inner feel but the organization of the phrases is binary. So it's this is a never-ending thing, you know, and I'm always trying to figure out, especially, you know, check out documents from friends of mine that play percussion and figure out how they think, you know, how they apply all these things, you know, all these different layers.
I feel like a large part of my education has been the exploration of what you just laid out, that meeting of binary language, eighth notes, with triplet-based rhythmic values, you know, and just finding out that alone, finding out how to make that feel right is a huge study, you know, and took me so long to get a handle on. And, you know, I remember playing with some of my heroes when I was at a young age. I was actually fortunate to play with Billy Higgins a lot when I was 19. Really lucky to play with a master like that. And the way he made those rhythms feel and come to life, it was a true education just to be around it and to absorb that language.
Yeah. Well, for non-musicians in the room, when we mean binary versus triplet feel, we mean by binary, we mean the typical division of two of the beat, when, like as in a military march, when you have like 1, 2, 1, 2, versus the triplet would be the waltz, like 1, da, 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 da. So all those two things, when you merge, the African culture was mostly rhythms that had this ternary, this triplet feel, and that merging of the cultures is what creates these different layers that are always in coexistence. Man, I have problems with that word. But maybe we can play another song. Maybe, this tune that you wrote. This is a much recent composition of yours, and it's one of my favorites. It's not only beautiful, but it's a reminder. I mean, I have this tendency to, I don't know why, I don't necessarily feel proud of this, that my music is always comes out being very hard, very complex, very difficult, and I've tried to with the years as I get older. I mean, I write less and less and less. I try to trim it down to the very essence, you know, of what really. I'm trying to eventually find that complex simplicity, or whatever we want to call it. And then when I play this tune of yours, it's a reminder. It's like, wow, this is just a few bars, and if I compare this to any of my charts are like 9 pages, and it's like black, all these notes.
Beautiful,
you know?
Beautiful stuff. Anyway.
But I have always the tendency to overdevelop everything, you know. I don't know why, but yeah, it's too late. It's 56 years doing that, so hey. But this composition of Larry is called Candle, and is wonderful. So this is it. Beautiful. You see, once in a while, do you remember that movie Amadeus? Did you ever watch the movie Amadeus?
Of course.
Sometimes I'm Salieri. Sometimes I wish I wrote that.
I'm in awe of your compositional abilities, LT.
Oh, man.
You know, it's interesting. You're talking about a theme in composition that resonates with me so much, which is that sometimes, you know, this piece happens to be very simple. In a way, it's like a haiku, right?
Yes, yes,
it feels like a miniature, right?
Yeah,
And this piece came out very quickly. And there's a lot of pieces that did not come out really quickly, and I labored over. And most of those pieces that did not come out quickly were sort of representative of whatever harmonic, melodic, rhythmic information that I'm sort of dealing with on a daily level in terms of practice. Like I'm really stretching towards these things, and they emerge in composition. So a lot of times I don't want to even play my own pieces because they represent the outer edge of my abilities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I embrace that too, because you grow from,
Yes.
you know, embracing those things that are sort of above you. But it's, you know, I feel like I have that same syndrome that you're talking about, in which I would like to sort of distill things and simplify things and make things, you know, sometimes music has to be complex.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
it's both.
Yeah, well, I'm glad
Yeah.
you know, there's I think that people always want to say that art, I mean, an artist should, you know, the artist should depict the artist or the artist's inner soul or whatever. And I find people that always talk simple, boring. But I also find the people that always speak complex, boring.
Yes.
So there's gotta be ranges of emotion and of complexity and humor, for God's sakes. You know, I find people that are always serious so boring. And people that are always joking so boring, you know?
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you apply that to composition, and it's like, well, that should be you, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are pieces that you've wrote that you go like, wow, this is so exciting, and then all of a sudden you have this piece like Candle that brings you like inside a deeper trip.
Yeah. But I think the trick is, you know, within that simplicity, there has to be an intensity, and the intensity comes from either the harmony. You know,
Yes,
which
yeah.
in the case of this harmony, it's very strange.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it goes from one key to an unrelated key almost every 2 bars.
Yeah.
Right. So this is always constantly this tension of elements. It's like when I guess it's like when Miles Davis plays. You know, yeah, he can play simply, but it's always dramatic.
Yeah, but yeah, that simple complexity. That
Right.
You know, that I mean, you don't want to be simple for the sake of being simple. I mean, you owe it to humankind to there's so many things that are plain simple, and there's plain simple beauty, and we always see it in nature, but you know, we can also bring simplicity with a little touch of thought-provoking, you know, substance. It's
That's
like,
right.
yeah, so that's what I mean, because I mean, otherwise it's either too watered down or too, you know, I know people that always talk like as if they are like telling me a quantum physics formula. You know,
Yeah.
they go through life
Yeah.
talking like that all the time. Everything is so like involved. It's like, man, don't you know a joke? Don't you know like? So, but
Yeah.
that's wonderful, man. So next to you, there's a deck of cards. Let's just go into the random thing.
Okay.
I have 52 questions here.
Should I shuffle?
Yeah, you have to shuffle, otherwise, yeah. Just make sure to leave the deck in the same order it was at the beginning.
That you planned.
Yeah, if not the joke, if not the questions will not work.
Because you can't improvise, right?
Okay, and just take one random card and let's see.
You got it.
Some of these questions range from, these are stuff that I always wondered, and I wanted to ask to all my heroes, and then some are very silly, some are very more profound than others. So pick a card and tell me what it is.
5 of clubs.
That's the 5 of clubs. I'm gonna go straight here. 5 of clubs. Oh man. Okay.
I feel like I'm getting my tarot reading here.
Yeah. Well, now I mean this one I always this is a good one because not everybody has the same drive to do this. So, would you invest? I mean, in the current world that we are living on right now, we're living in right now, would you invest a large sum of personal money to do a big budget record, your ideal cast of talents, or your magnum opus, maybe?
Huh. You know, that's interesting because that question already, when you ask that question, sort of gives me this feeling of anxiety in my gut. The pressure of making a magnum opus. Oh my God. I don't think I could approach anything with that perspective. Because then I think my ego would be too involved, and I think that I would try too hard, as opposed to allowing whatever the organic nature of what's on my plate, whatever it is, whatever moment I am in life, whatever music is attracting me, to find really the true core of what I need to find in the music. Mm-hmm. In terms of recordings and choosing people for recordings, to me, it's always been based on long-standing relationships that I have with people. It's not to say that I can't go into a situation and have a deep connection with someone that I have no history with, which can happen. But I find that is not as common as the opposite, right? So, I mean, there's so many all-star records with, you know, the greatest names on the face of the earth, virtuosi, incredibly talented musicians that are put together, and the project ends up being a complete
It's
mess.
never a guarantee of anything.
It's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
And chemistry is so much a big part of this, you know. So for me, going in and making a recording, first of all, I would have to take the descriptor magnum opus away, because that to me would... and of course, this is different for everybody. For me, it would produce the wrong results. I go into the studio I always go into the studio with the intention of just being real, you know, whatever that is for that moment, being honest. And I don't always, you know, I'm not 100% there, but for the most part, you know, I want to keep the ego at bay. I want the musical moment to determine what my next move is, you know,
Nice.
and the musical environment. And I also want to be giving. I don't want it to just be about me. So Magnus Opum, in my mind, also maybe brings too much of me into the process. I also like accompanying people. I think there's so much joy in that. I mean, when you play, I hear that in spades. I mean, I hear that. So that's such a big thing. And that's why I love playing with singers, because I love being supportive, you know, and letting someone else shine and helping them to reach the apex of what they're capable of doing.
That's great.
So I think that answers that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, also, magnum opus. That's a big word, and I just learned that. I just wanted to use that word, man. Come on, cut me some slack here. No, magnum opus. Yeah, as in, I mean, we all have this like projects that we. I mean, well, I guess not everybody, but like we have this music that has been resonating in our heads, and we wish, you know, we could have the document of that, you know. So that's what I mean with this, like that, the music that you always wanted to document. but also the question has the double intention, because in the current state of affairs, I mean, the way the music business has, I don't know, it hasn't evolved. Actually, it has evolved. Devolved was the word. I see people that actually invest all this money in projects that, right now as a business model, it's kind of like questionable,
Yeah.
So that was.
Well, I mean, also with home studios, it's unnecessary to invest a lot of money.
Yeah.
You have the technology to actually take the price tag of a studio at least off of that. Obviously, if your project involves a lot of people and you want to do it in a live situation, then that's a different can of worms, But I guess I'm a minimalist. I have no big grand notions of doing something. There's my projects always emerge out of a context. So, for example, my first solo recording, because I did numerous recordings as a co-leader with my friend Larry Koonse, who's going to be on next week.
Next week, yeah.
We became fast friends based on sort of our very deep musical connection from the get-go.
Totally. I can see it. I can touch it.
Right. So we had a band that we co-founded called the Los Angeles Jazz Quartet, and we produced numerous recordings. And then, at some point, Darek and I had played in quite a few different live events as a duo, and there was something very special about it. And that was in the back of my head. And there was something that about playing in a duo context with Darek that sort of just screamed for European classical sort of setting.
Yeah.
Because that's where Darek, he drips melody. It's like Chopin coming out of the bass, right?
Essence.
Yeah, exactly. Just so melodic. Yeah. And so we made a project called Storybook that sort of came out of that notion of wanting to, I've never really wanted to go into the studio and record make a project about just a list of standards. For me, that doesn't feel, it's already been done in a much better way than I can actually do it.
Not necessarily, but yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So for me, it's much more about, here's another project. So I did a project in dedication to my teacher, Jimmy Weibel. And this came at a time when he was struggling in terms of his health. And Jimmy was a landmark guitarist that sort of had been sort of forgotten, because he was a pre-bebop guitarist. He was friends with Charlie Christian. But Jimmy was a true virtuoso. At one time, I would say he was one of 5 people on the planet. Like when you name Teddy Wilson and Errol Garner and Art Tatum, he was in that, of that ilk, right? Wow. So I'd studied with Jimmy, and I was privy to all these incredible compositions that he made. So Jimmy approached me one day, said, I would really like to have my material updated, freshened up, because most of his material was about solo guitar. So I took that material and I rearranged it for, clarinet and a guitar quartet, very sort of retro, but freshened up too and very modern, because his music was very modern. So that was another context. So for me, a recording has to come out of some, it almost feels like the universe telling me, okay, this is on your plate. This is dropped in front of you. This is now. Yeah. Right.
Great. And I'm going to take advantage of this moment, because I'm very bad for this, and I truly don't mean to neglect the audience. And there's a lot of people connecting from Brazil.
Wow.
I know, and I'm so appreciative of them. Muito obrigado, nossos amigos no Brasil. Fico muito feliz de ter vocês com a gente aqui. E continuem acompanhando nossos lives. Acho que é muito. A gente vai ter muitas coisas muito boas acontecendo aqui no estúdio, como Larry, realmente ensinando, compartilhando os conceitos que realmente importam, né? E fico feliz de poder chegar a vocês desse jeito. Also, our friends in Japan. I'm not gonna say all that in Japanese, but we have friends in Japan that are connecting. It's close to noon there, and I hope you are enjoying. And it's a real privilege to bring you these conversations with some of my heroes, because I know that as I am learning, I know a lot of people can also benefit from this. And if you agree that Larry is touching on some really interesting points, then here's the way that you can materialize your support. Please send your donations. We need to keep I want to make sure that their time is taken care of, and also the investment of technical investment. But as I see that maybe I'm gonna have to change a camera soon, so so you can send your donations. And next week we're gonna have also another deluxe guest, special guest. Darek Oles is gonna be, or Darek Oleskiewicz is gonna be with us. So
Actually, Dariusz,
yeah,
Oleszkiewicz.
Yeah, and I bet you've been to his town
Many times.
Yeah. He's
times.
like
he's a hero.
He's a hero.
He's a legend.
I cannot say it any other way. I was there, and everybody wanted to know about Darek.
Yeah.
So you'll know about Darek. You're gonna get to meet him here, and he's gonna talk, and it's gonna be interesting time to share with you guys. So here's the link for the donations. I think Katina has some questions, right?
I'm gonna throw those questions, but you guys gotta play, right? So from Juana Trujillo.
Juan Trujillo.
Juanma? Yeah.
Juanma.
What allows you both to get in the flow state when playing, removing everything that can be a distraction? That's one question. And then trigger fire on. How do you both? How do you do with protecting your hearing in so many loud venues and higher volume exposure?
All right.
Okay.
Beautiful questions. So the first question was from Juanma Trujillo.
Yeah, big shout out to Juan.
Yeah,
I know him very well.
Yeah, you're a student.
Love
to
him.
My friend from Venezuela, my countryman.
Yeah.
About how to block all the distractions when you are in the moment trying to feed from each other, improvising. And the other one is how we protect our hearing when we are in loud situations. So I'm gonna.
So I think the essence of what Juan's question is what allows us to sort of focus in on what has just emerged and get deep into it, right? So for me, that the answer to that question has been a long process, and it's more about, if anything, listening, getting myself out of the way, and just sort of taking in information. So, for example, as OTMARO and I are playing, and I have a deep trust of OTMARO because I have a long history with him, and I know what he's capable of. And so for me, that gives me a lot of confidence coming into the situation. But the fact is that I'm playing through a headphone mix, and it's imperfect. So a lot of times I have to sort of get myself out of the way and just sort of take in information, because when you play in terms of a time center, it's very clear where your time is. So focus for me is mainly about listening and getting my own self out of the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always make the analogy with the credible actors. You know, a credible actor happens, a credible performance from an actor happens when it's organic to his partner, not about the lines. He can say his lines in a million different ways, but it's only credible if it makes sense with the gravitas of his partner. So
that's true. You know, it's interesting. I saw, you know, the Actors Workshop, you know, that show that used to be on with James Lipton.
Yeah.
Really great show. And I think it was, God, I'm not sure. I think it might have been De Niro. But it might not have been. But it was an actor that was talking about being in a situation where maybe it was De Niro was in this play and someone fed him a line that wasn't great, and this actor was kind of weak as part of this ensemble. And he was amazed at how De Niro honored what this actor gave him, because that's what was present. Yeah. He had to say yes to it. He had to take it in, no matter where it was, you know. That's a very profound thing, you know.
Yeah. And regarding the hearing, saving our hearing, I can say, I mean, well, I would love to address it real quick. We would love to play another song too, but and there's other questions too. That the best way is not to put yourself in situations where you're going to play loud and senseless at a senselessly loud volume. Now, having said that, it's almost impossible to filter your gigs. I mean, sometimes you have to do gigs that, I mean, require that. So if you are in a situation where you're doing a very loud and aggressive and gig, I mean, just get a pair of those especially molded earplugs that have a filter and you know, protect your hearing. I started doing that a long time ago. I blew this ear, my right ear, I blew it. I mean, I have the condition because I was trying to do something I didn't know how to, and then the speaker just blew on my ear, like terrible feedback all of a sudden, and it blew this ear. And so it's been many years that I use that protection. But if I'm in control, I mean, when I'm playing in a jazz context, acoustically, I have to pretty much have a hard line, you know, like leadership when it comes to keeping people at a basic level of civility with the volume. Otherwise, I mean, our shelf life is going to be reduced greatly, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, your answers are great. For me, your first answer is the one that really resonates with me. I have the privilege now of being able to not accept gigs in which maybe the audience is loud or the music is too loud or it's just not to my taste. So that would be number one. But a lot of people aren't afforded that you know, possibility. What I can offer is that when I play in situations where there's a lot of competition for sound, whether it's, you know, a table that's in front of me that's talking or chattering, the music can only go to a certain level. So I'm very forgiving of myself if I don't reach a deep level, because if the sonic environment is compromised, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Plus, if you want to really be a dynamic ride, you need the soft as much as the loud.
That's right.
And if you set it up always from I mean, piano players, for instance, if you go through a classical program, you spend so much time trying to have your soft, ultra soft touch, and you never can use it. You never can use it. So if you are in a situation of being the leader of your own unit, you are the one that is responsible for promoting that and telling the guys, hey, listen, I want to do this. I want to be able to play soft and hear myself. Otherwise, I mean, what are we doing here, you know?
Yeah.
So there's one more question. I Actually, let's play, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Sure.
Let's play. This is a composition of yours that you actually dedicated to that great master that you had.
Yeah,
that you were
Jimmy
talking
Weibel.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I always felt that Jimmy, for those unfamiliar with Jimmy's style, he was raised in Louisiana and played in a lot of like country swing bands early, you know, Spade Cooley, Bob Wills. And he was very famous at the time. And there's a certain kind of swing that is a Texas swing. It's very insistent. Time is like, it's like a bulldozer, can move. It's like your time. It can just move through anything, just so powerful, right? Jimmy had that. So Jimmy always had that beautiful swing, but it was more like a Texas swing, very insistent, exacting, and insistent. But his harmonic vocabulary was more like Bartok, right? Yeah. Very, very quirky and angular, yeah. And dissonant but consonant at the same time, you know. And so anyway, I think this piece sort of reflects that. It's called Weibelesque.
All right.
Weird.
Ouch! That last chord is like that's how being safe sounds like. Safe, safe.
You know, it's so funny. Transitioning back to the head after swinging, it's the weirdest feeling, right?
Yeah.
In a way, this feels like some sort of Brazilian groove. Something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Because it has a tendency of being all ups. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Incredible stuff, man. I love this tune.
Thank you.
Plus, the very same. This is something that we talked about with Bob. This very same composition is giving you a clear blueprint of places you can go in your improvisation. You know, in terms of conceptual material, or how quirky or how economic you can be with it. You know,
Right.
or not. You know, it's so clear. You know, it's a great starting point from for doing great stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a traditional form, right? I mean, AABA form exists in so many different tunes, and of course, rhythm changes. You know, that's iconic. You know, in the jazz world. Yet this kind of sort of gives you maybe a different perspective. Like you said, it's a little quirky, right?
Yeah.
So with that structure, there's freedom because we have that structure that we agree on. But within that structure, there's also all sorts of different possibilities.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Wow, great. So listen, if we're here's the way. If you like what you're listening and what you're getting from this interview, please keep supporting us. I want to make sure that Larry goes back home, knowing that his time has been, for a positive change for you, and also he was gonna go home with a full belly because I'm gonna be cooking some really serious stuff after this. So please donate. Here's the link. And to our friends, o nuestros amigos en Brasil, nuestros amigos en Venezuela que están viendo esto, espero que les guste, espero que que el material sea de su agrado. And Let's pick another card. Let's pick another random question.
Let's do that. I'll just throw them in the air.
Yeah, just with a sword. I'll just like
exactly.
Try to pop
you have a
one
sword?
of them.
You have a sword here?
Well, yeah, we have all kinds of swords and all kinds of weapons in this house.
From your career as a magician. Because Katina was inside the box, right? When you put the swords.
Exactly, yeah.
Ouch!
That explains the sudden weight loss of Katina. It's like, I went like a little with the sword. Like, oh, there it was, like 20 pounds of extra flesh right
Actually,
there.
that's what I need. Cut 10 pounds off me. The Queen of Hearts.
Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts.
That's a good card.
Yes. Queen of Hearts. Wow, this is man. You're getting all the good questions today. Bob Shepard had it so easy. Last time it was all fun. It's like, man.
Yeah.
Okay, this is have you ever tutor or sponsor a protege or taught someone for free?
Yes. Yeah. When I sense that someone comes to me with a sincere desire that feels like it comes from not wanting to get deeper into the art form to impress, but deeper into the art form to find some truth about themselves. And they do.
They do
Yeah, I've had students like that.
Yeah, me too.
Some serious truth about themselves, because I think ultimately that's what we're looking for. We're looking for some truth that's beneath the surface through this art making, right? Something that's invisible to us.
That's great.
And when I sense that, I have said, no, I can't take your money, because this is for the highest value.
Great.
Yeah.
Now the follow-up is like, would you be taking a middle-aged Venezuelan piano player as a protege?
Who might that be?
I don't know. I think Katina has another question from the audience.
Yeah, it's a question from Pat Conning asking Larry where he can find what is in the box.
Oh, yeah.
Without having to pay $970, or it's on eBay.
Is it on eBay for $970?
Yeah, you see it?
Wow.
Yeah.
God, they'll probably.
Someone is making a lot of money out of it.
Where's the money? I don't see the money.
We never see it.
Well, what's in the? Okay, so I actually started a record company with Joe LaBarbera and Tom Warrington and Clay Jenkins. Tom Warrington, who always wants me to say hello to you,
and it will be forever in my memory. I have an image of Tom Warrington that, it will be forever in my memory.
What a great guy, huh?
Yeah.
He just loved playing. I guess you had a history of sort of playing it vibrato.
Yeah.
And he said that sort of restored his faith for a long time.
Yeah, he's such a wonderful cat. I miss him a lot. Actually.
Me too. And great trumpet player Clay Jenkins, who teaches at Eastman now, and Joe LaBarbera, of course, who was Bill Evans' last drummer. Anyway, we got together. We're all friends. We all lived in L.A. at that time, and decided to make a record company called Jazz Compass. And so What's in the Box is on that label. That label has, gone the way of most small independent labels. We're now defunct. They no longer exist. We saw the writing in the wall about 2 or 3 years ago. Sales were down, CD sales. So anyway, long story short, you can find What's in the Box, which was originally on Jazz Compass, on iTunes, Amazon. Any digital retailers will have What's in the Box. Just do a search for What's in the Box, or do a search for my last name, Koonse, Koonse, and you'll find it.
Great. Beautiful. I have 2 more questions, and time really flies when you're doing this, man. We're having too much fun playing, and let's pick another random question.
Okay.
And that was going to be the last random question.
10 of clubs.
10 of clubs. Ouch.
Oh, sorry, 10 of spades.
10 of spades. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. You saved from the mother of all bomb questions.
See, I knew it was coming. That's why I changed.
10 of spades. Okay, this is one that I get asked I get asked this a lot. And have you ever had another kind of job, or have you ever considered having another job, pandemic aside? I mean, nothing to do with the pandemic, but out of love or another interest.
Yeah. Well, when I was just out of high school, of course, I was gigging since I was 16, but it wasn't the kind of gigging that pays the bills. You know, I was playing with my friends. I was playing at the occasional wedding, you know, playing parties, playing at the occasional club gig that paid, you know, $10 or whatever. So we're not talking about a substantial amount of money. So when I went to college, I did have to supplement my income. I occasionally would do an odd job here and there. I was a janitor at Macy's. That didn't work out so well. Excuse me, janitor at May Company. That was like drudgery for me. It was not easy cleaning up at the end of the night. I also worked in a bakery for a while, and I worked in the central part of the bakery where, you know, the loaves are coming down on conveyor belts. You know, it's Weber's bread. And I'd come home every night looking like Frosty the Snowman because I had flour, you know, all in the air.
Like Jack Nicholson at the end of The Shining. Like, you know?
Exactly. Honey, I'm home.
Covered in snow.
So, you know, none of those jobs. I also did a job looking for a oil drill bit company. My grandfather was a machinist.
Okay.
And so he had an inside track to this oil bit company. And I looked through journals to find future oil wells, you know, and different resources, and noted these in these journals, these oil reserves, right? Boring, totally boring. And the thing is, at the same time I was doing a 6-night-a-week gig at a place called the Tokyo Club. And this was a club, amazing that you have a 6-night-a-week gig, right? But we're talking about $30 a night. So I made $180 a week, but I still needed to make more to sort of pay my education at USC. So I had 2 jobs. And this job at the Tokyo Club was basically the situation where you have these Japanese businessmen that come in, and there's hostesses that are dressed up in kimonos. And you play sort of a mix of like jazz, popish tunes like Take the A Train, and Japanese pop music, which is it's a lot like, you know.
Yeah, Enka, a lot of Enka.
Exactly, that kind of vibe, right? So I remember getting caught one morning because I was sleeping on this oil and gas journal escapade, you know, looking up all these figures. And I remember it very distinctly. I was sound asleep and the boss came in, and I woke up and I drooled out of the side of my mouth. And he said, okay. He says, get yourself together, come into my office. And that was sort of my last day.
Wow.
You know.
Great.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, I've done other jobs, but not with a passion.
Oh, okay. So I want to ask you just one more question. I am guilty of doing what some people in Congress did, you know, doing the inside trading thing, you know, when they, you know, sell their stock, you know, as soon as they hear of anything, any changes, you know. So I did talk to a friend of mine, guitar player, ahead of this, and I told him, listen, I know you're not going to be able to watch the streaming, but if you have any question ahead of time, just I'll make sure that your question gets answered. And I think it's a great question.
Okay.
And it is, what size of underwear? Oh, no, this is from another. This is another guest. Sorry.
XXXL.
Okay. How to move beyond the typical 2-5-1 progressions to hyper, more modern concepts in composition and improvisation. What is a good what should be a good intermediate concept to incorporate to achieve that end?
Okay, That is a great question. First of all, I think you have to remove the pressure of forcing yourself to do something because you feel like what you're playing is not modern enough, right? So the starting point, I think, to answer this question is to find out how to navigate a tune and a progression in a really inside way. And from that perspective, when you know those points of arrival, it's very easy to sort of move outside of those bounds and know how to embellish those points. So, for example, let me see, if I'm playing a tune like All the Things You Are, and I go... Okay, so now what I'm playing there is sort of simple melodic motion that sort of really outlines and implies what's happening harmonically in a very straightforward way. Very obvious, playing a lot of thirds on the downbeat. Although I'm not looking to play thirds on the downbeat, I just tend to arrive...
It's a consonance that
Yeah, it's the consonants, right? Yeah. So once that's in place, then you can sort of look for those moments that are outside. So if I, let's see here, good thing up happening. So yeah, it's like it's a great question, but it's also one that's difficult to answer in a brief fashion. So yeah, the starting point is finding something that's very consonant, and then from that point of consonance, you can find these departure points, which are more about chromaticism and pointing toward those points of arrival.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I may ask my little, what am I doing? Contact info, no. The one thing that, for instance, the 251s is something that is perhaps like, the building block of much of what we do, right?
Right.
But the 251 practice doesn't stop at the literal 251 too, because that's one thing that that you can create alternate 251s surrounding a target note. So whatever you know about 251s, you can base an entire modern language exclusively using 251s. There's a great book that talks about this, the chromatic approach to jazz harmony by Dave Liebman, for instance. I mean, it's like you can, if you apply the 251 literally to arrive into the tonic of that 251, that's great. But you can also create entire alternative facts.
That's right.
Alternate facts. So as long as you are in control and knowing all this vocabulary, it's just already in your fingers. So it's
it's interesting you bring that up, Maro, because when we were playing rhythm changes, I had a sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were superimposing countdown changes occasionally.
Yeah.
Over the progression.
Yeah.
Now, what you're doing is you're playing outside. It's ultra modern. It's something that Coltrane used to do as well, which is that you can have a certain pathway that sort of the other harmonic pathway sort of it gives you an architecture to work with that is compelling and has a certain sense of direction. And
arrival.
And arrival too.
Yeah.
You can move away from a key center and come to that key center through a circuitous path, that's unexpected. And it sounds very chromatic because it's coming from superimposing another set of changes.
Yeah.
Right.
So one thing, is like if you compare the outplaying, to the act of, when you have a house and you're living in a neighborhood, all the possible ways to get to your house, all the streets around your house, and as more options, it's going to look like, it might look like you're in a different neighborhood, but you still know how to make that connection going back to your house. So that's what knowing, the theory allows you, or practicing a lot, or hearing, or doing a lot. I'm not advocating for only doing it through the theory world, but also through the experience and through repetition or whatever it means, so that that even if I'm facing whatever area in Los Angeles, I know that if I look to the mountains, my house is that way, and then I'll go.
Yeah. It's an interesting phenomenon with a lot of younger musicians that, of course, they have their heroes. Someone maybe like Kurt Rosenwinkel, who's amazing harmonic and melodic mind, and they try to emulate that vocabulary that sort of moves outside, and in that process of emulating that or sort of using that vocabulary, you don't get a sense of direction or the architecture of the original tune, because they're trying to be ultra modern all the time and ultra hip, rather than actually telling a story, listening to what they're playing, and developing that story. It's coming from more of a sense of like taking these licks and sort of putting them in situations.
Using them like Lego pieces, sometimes
because they feel like it makes them hip or ultra modern.
That's happening. That's happening all across. There's a lot of clones. The new generation. That's one of the questions that I ask. It's in the questionnaire, but I talk about this seeking, following a trend. This trendy thing, this trendy sound that everybody wants to pursue, and sometimes they just pursue it as a photograph. They just get the photograph of it, but they don't know where the setting of the photograph took place.
Yes.
And what's the purpose, or what's the meaning of that photograph when that happened. But we can still, man, you're not gonna believe it. It's almost 2 hours.
Come on. Can we go for another 2?
Man, I am so thankful that you set this time aside for me, and to have this conversation, and to rescue me from the sameness of my days.
Likewise, my friend.
And I am forever your fan. And any chance we have to play is always a discovery. So I thank you very much. And
I feel the same way, OTMARO. I'm honored, first of all, that you would ask. You're a hero of mine. No, honestly. That's from my heart, and I've learned so much from you. So it's such a pleasure to actually play with you in any context. I always learn from the experience. I did want to make one brief plug.
Sure, please.
I have a website that I've dedicated 3 years of work in terms of like making online video lessons and creating PDFs that go along with those online lessons. If you're a guitarist and you really want to get beneath the surface, I feel like the material that I've offered on this website will give you a good start, and especially in this era of remote learning, I've really spent a lot of time trying to make this information as easily accessible as possible, and as clear with PDFs. And it's a website called eliteguitarist.com.
I created a title for you right there.
Great.
So they're looking at it in their screens.
Excellent.
And you also have Larry's website, my website, and thank you so much for tuning in. It's it means a lot. I cannot read the comments real time. Katina has been reading the comments, and but I can see from the corner of my eye, I can see the movement, the activity. And I thank you for being so engaged in this. And please continue supporting our interviews, our conversations. And next week is going to be my very good friend and classmate. We went to school together. And I guess a hero of both of us is going to be Dariusz Oleszkiewicz, also known as Darek Oles. He is the personification of elegance and essence in music in his instrument, and he's been doing collaborations with everybody from Peter Erskine to Pat Metheny. So I really look forward to this. And again, thank you, Larry, for being with us. Thank you for tuning in. Nossos amigos no Brasil, obrigado, muito obrigado por assistir nosso live. Boku no tomodachi, Nihonji tomodachi wa arigatou gozaimashita. Atsukaresama deshita.
Arigatou gozaimashita.
All right, guys. Take care.